Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas, on Saturday, August the 3rd, and welcome to our commentary. I have a post over at the American Thinker today, Saturday morning. I posted it Saturday morning. You can check it out anytime, of course, over at AmericanThinker.com, where I'm talking about this very unfortunate situation with Venezuela. We did a video with George Rodriguez on Friday about Venezuela. You can catch that video below this one. But the post that I wrote on Saturday is about the position of one president of Mexico, Lopez Obrador, who's basically sitting back saying, well, if Maduro tells me that there was no fraud, I don't think there was fraud. In other words, he's basically taking the word of Maduro, who says there was no fraud. Now, he's really an outlier, an exception, because in most other countries in Latin America, what you're seeing is more and more countries literally recognizing the opposition candidate, Mr. González Urrutia, as the president-elect of Venezuela. Not only other countries in Latin America, but the United States is doing the same thing. We're recognizing the opposition candidate as the president-elect and saying that Maduro has to accept the fact that he lost the election. And it's very unfortunate that the president of Mexico is taking this posture, because I mean, what is he doing? He's trusting the word of a man who is in the process of putting troops on the streets and potentially attacking his own people who are protesting all the fraudulent activities that happened on the recount. Look, I think it's really sad that Mexico has taken this position. Now, the argument that Mexico uses is, well, we don't want to get involved in other people's affairs. So, we don't want to tell them that they committed fraud any more than we want them to tell us that we committed fraud. So it's kind of a non-intervention. We don't tell people what to do. They don't tell us what to do. And in theory, I understand that position. But I think in this particular case, given the importance of Venezuela in Latin America and given the impact of this immigration of people leaving Venezuela and the economic collapse of Venezuela, you would think that Maduro, you would think that Lopez Obrador of Mexico, who has seen thousands of Venezuelans come through his country to the United States, you would think that he would take a more let's just say, a more mature position, and at least be willing to accept what so many other people in Latin America are accepting, and that is that fraud was committed in Venezuela. Now, I've never been a fan of Lopez Obrador of Mexico. I've always felt that he's a leftist, and he's always been wanting to kind of position himself as kind of the leader of the third world after he leaves office, which is in October. But this is very unfortunate that he's taking this position with respect to what is in everybody's mind a case of a stolen election in Venezuela. And, I don't know what to say other than I know many Mexican friends don't like what Lopez Obrador is doing. And I know many members of the Mexican Congress don't like what Lopez Obrador is doing. And I know people around the world don't like what he's doing, but Lopez Obrador is thinking about himself and his own future, as I say, as some kind of a third world leader. He wants to become sort of a Nelson Mandela of the new Nelson Mandela, some kind of a third world leader. And I just think in doing so, he's putting the credibility of Mexico at risk, because I think most Mexicans know that this election in Venezuela was stolen. And for the president of Mexico to play this game, it's pretty sad. I have a post coming out Sunday morning about the economy and this latest employment report that came out on Friday, which is giving us some indications of a recession. I mean, it's not a formal recession yet until you have, I think, 2 negative quarters or whatever. But the lack of manufacturing production and the lack of job creation has a lot of economists worried that we may be stalling, or that the economy may be stalling and simply slowing down to a point where people are not going to be able to find work as rapidly. A lot of the jobs that were recently created were government jobs. A lot of them were service jobs. Manufacturing is simply not working as well as it did before. And I think it's just another indication that Biden economics is not working the way people believe that it is. And I think, as I mentioned in my post, all economic reports eventually have a political tone to them. Eventually, you bring them into the political conversation. All economic reports, you bring them into the political conversation. And all I can tell you is that this is a bad report that came out on Friday. So I hope it comes into the political conversation. I see a note here from someone saying that we hit two negative quarters once already. Okay, maybe I missed that or didn't see that. Thanks for pointing that out. But again, I think we're in an economic situation right now where the numbers tell a story, but the daily lives of people tell another story. And you go out to eat, you're paying a lot more for food, for a restaurant. Everything you buy is a lot more expensive. And I think that's also part of the story too, that the cost of living is hurting a lot of people. The cost of rent, the cost of everything is hurting a lot of people. We just put gasoline today at $3.19 a gallon. Now, some people, of course, in other parts of the country, they laugh at that. Our gas in Texas is usually a little cheaper, but nevertheless, $3.19 is still a lot more money than I want to pay. I was paying $2 not long ago, about 4 years ago. I was paying $2 a gallon. So it is the economic data, and it's also the sense that many people have that the economy is simply not working out for them. And when you see a report like this on Friday about the economic, the job creation, which was below expectations, you worry about the country and you worry about, where we're going. And the last thing you want to do is head into a recession, but I think it's inevitable that we probably will, because we were playing around, fudging the numbers a little bit to maybe get over the election. But I don't think we can do that anymore. One of the things that concerns me most about this economy is the debt that we have built up. I mean, at some point you got to pay that debt, or you got to devalue your currency, or you got to, go into the kind of economic crisis that we've seen in other countries. So that worries me a lot, and I don't see people talking about it. I don't see people talking about the economic crisis related to the public debt. So that's an issue that I hope. In fact, let me just say that there's two issues that I wish the two candidates would talk more about. And I know that Trump has tried to do this. I don't think the Democrats or Kamala Harris has ever touched on this. Kamala Harris has never had a press conference. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think she's touched anything. But there's two issues that I think the next president is going to have to deal with. The first one is the debt that we're talking about. And the other is the drop in recruitment for the U.S. Armed Forces. We are simply not recruiting or getting enough volunteers in the U.S. Armed Forces. And when that happens, of course, then you have a situation where you got to go back to a draft, particularly if a conflict breaks out over the next few years. So those two issues, I'd love to see the candidates talk a little bit more about them. Well, let me leave you today with just a little history note. It was on this day in 1492, that year, of course, I'm sure reminds you of something, 1492, but it was on this day, August 3rd, that Columbus set sail to what he thought was a different world than the one that he eventually ran into. Now, Columbus, as I understand, died in 1508 or 1509, and he passed away not knowing that he had actually discovered something totally different. But anyway, he did. But he set sail on this day in 1492, and he took that long trip across the ocean looking for India, as I understand. But he found something brand new that we now call America. So we remember Christopher Columbus, who set sail on this day in 1492. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great weekend, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.